first time I've been back on campus since I graduated, and to be back here now, and it's also a little awkward because I coach in Conference Carolinas against North Greenville, so I see one backpack that says cross country, so don't tell Cameron anything I say in here today. Track, just track, okay, fair enough. So I did my internship when I left here at Francis Marion. I was an assistant cross country coach there, and that served as my full-time internship. It was unpaid. The only kind of, not salary, but any kind of payment that I got was for driving their buses. So as soon as I got there, I had to get a CDL to drive their bus and for their team and for several other teams, and that was the only income that I got for that entire semester. So ate a good chunk of change living in Florence and working at that job. I believe it's still working a minimum of 40 hours a week. So that helped me get used to a normal schedule for coaching. When I was at Francis Marion, I felt like I poured a lot of time into that program, started to feel comfortable there, really liked the head coach. You know, he's the longest tenured head cross country and track coach in the state. However, the administration had other ideas. I was the first assistant that he had in his time at Francis Marion, and I think I'm still the only one that he's had. So when I got to the end of the semester and I graduated, there was not going to be a job there for me. So I had to turn around. I went home, and just by chance, I ran into the head coach at Anderson University at the time, and I got in there as a volunteer. And when I was there for a year and a half, and during that year and a half, I worked 2 other jobs besides coaching. The head coach there, he wanted me to train with his distance runners, so I ran roughly 90 to 100 miles a week with the men's distance runners there, and working probably 70 to 80 hours a week, which is quite a workload. Luckily, my finances weren't that bad because I lived in Anderson at the time, but I was a volunteer distance coach, and the assistant sprints, hurdles, and jumps coach resigned while I was there. And the head coach came to me and says, look, I know you're not a sprints coach, but we need a sprints coach now. If you want to get into this profession, figure it out. And so I got hired literally on the basis of being right place, the right time, and being given an opportunity. So I took over sprints, hurdles, and jumps, something completely outside of my depth. And out of that came 4 all-conference performances. I had an All-American in the 200. His name is Christopher Burton. Ran 2084, was 4th in the country that year. So I was very blessed to have very good athletes and to be able to pick up where they left off. But I was not a sprinter, I was not a hurdler, I was not a jumper. I was a distance runner when I ran here at North Greenville. And I ran post-collegiately for a couple of years as well. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways I got was being able to adapt. Because I went into coaching like, I'm just going to be a distance coach, that's it. I'm not going to coach any other events. And then my first real job that's getting paid is sprints, hurdles, and jumps. So I think probably one of the biggest advice to give to you guys, is everyone in here pretty much seniors? Seniors? Okay. That as you guys are going in, whatever your expectation of what you think your coaching role is going to be, you need to be open to where the doors are going to lead, because it may not be the exact path that you want. So towards the end of my time at Anderson, the head coach there left and went to Queens. He went to a much better position. I had an opportunity to be the head coach at Anderson, but I had just gone from being a volunteer to part-time, and I had just become full-time. I told the administration, there's no way. I'm not ready to take this over. I'm going to stay in an assistant role. And so someone else was hired, and I worked with him for roughly a month. I then got a call from College of Charleston. And so I think the head coach at Catawba had given them my name. And so having those back channel connections really led to that job, and they asked me to come down and interview, got the position. And when I got there, my expectation was to be the distance coach. And so that ended up not being the case when I arrived. I was more or less there just to hold a clipboard and to hold a stopwatch, which is really not coaching. I'm just kind of there participating. And so I went to the head coach and said, I came here for a different role, to be a coach, to be able to have more responsibility. So I was given, again, sprinters and hurdlers. So something that's not my primary, that's not what I would prefer to coach. And I was given the sprinters and the hurdlers at College Charleston, which at the time they were not putting scholarship money into. I was given, more or less the group that no one else wanted to coach. And so in the year that I spent at College of Charleston, which I worked, I actually took a 50% pay cut to go to Charleston. So going from Anderson to Charleston, cost of living goes way up, salary gets cut in half, you obviously have to work other jobs. So while I was there, I still trained post-collegiately as a runner. I coached sprints and hurdles. I worked at Fleet Feet in Mount Pleasant, which is, somewhat similar to being in the running community. And, again, working 70+ hours a week, running a ton. I actually used running post-collegiate as a way to kind of pay the bills. I had to win road races in the area, and you get free meals out of it. You get, sometimes gift cards. You survive by whatever means necessary. While I coached the sprinters and the hurdlers there, I had a freshman girl there in the 1, 2, and 400 be their second all-time in the program's history. I coached their school record holder in the 400-meter hurdles. Again, hurdles is not an event I've ever done. And, did really well with a group that basically got no care, no attention, and wasn't, the future was that there were not going to be any more sprinters and hurdlers in the program. And, to be in a situation like that where you're the assistant coach of athletes who are not wanted, it can create a lot of dissension within the team. The head coach, was the distance coach, and that's where all the resources were going to go. When you're handed a situation like that, now being a head coach, being on this side of it, if you're an assistant and that's the kind of group that you get, while you do want to serve your athletes, the ones that are in your care, you also have to keep in mind that you are wanting to advance in this profession. You do not want to upset the people above you. I would say that my time in Charleston, I was very belligerent. I, didn't really appreciate, because I felt like how the athletes felt, kind of pushed to the side. And I wanted more authority, more power than that. I also wasn't really happy with how coaching in Division I was. I felt like my mindset really it changed from how it was at a Christian college where you poured more care into the athletes, where you have athletes at all levels. In Division I, if you can't cut it, see you later. And while I understand why that it's that way in Division I, it's kind of heart-wrenching to just kind of throw kids to the side just because they can't cut it. You have to look kids in the eyes, and their parents are calling you saying, why did you do this to my kid? And it's like, well, this is the big leagues. And so it honestly left a very sour taste in my mouth. So I don't know how many of you are dead set and it's Division I or bust for me. I would really rethink that and consider all levels of competition where you decide to coach, if you decide to go in the college coaching route. And then towards the end of my time at College Charleston, I knew that I wanted a bigger role, and so I started to look for head coaching jobs. And so I struck out on roughly 21, and I was the finalist for 3 of them. I was very fortunate that, Erskine ended up being the door that opened, but you go through a lot of interviews. You get a lot of no's. You guys are all going to see a lot of no's when you get out of here and start looking to go into coaching. And I think what really made me appreciate the opportunities more when you start getting those no's, because you feel like you're the most qualified candidate, you crushed the interview, you felt like you had a connection with the administration, and then it's just, you're not the guy. And so, I think when you guys are going through that situation, you're going to get a lot of them, and it's not a bad thing. Each interview that I got, I took something away from, as in, I could do better at, if the interview is a virtual one, if it's over Skype, or if it's a call, or if it's in person, you have to be okay with whatever that landscape is. And so I got a call from Erskine, and they asked me to come and interview for their head coaching position. And so they had a women's cross-country program. There were 5 people on it. There was no men's cross-country team. There was no men's and women's track team. And they were asking me to rebuild women's cross-country and to start 3 new programs in one shot, which isn't the most ideal way to start one. So I think what was most special to me about taking that job and why I wanted it was there was no, I have to take someone else's athletes and either throw them out or just make them adapt to what I have. It's a clean slate. You get to completely start over, build your own program, have your own name on it. And so this is my 3rd year at Erskine this year. And I think what's been the most special for me about coaching there is, the first year we had a women's cross country team dead last in the conference, like non-competitive whatsoever. And then there's no track season, so I spent all the spring just 100% recruiting, administrative stuff. You're not doing any coaching. And so I want you guys all to understand that even though you're going into coaching, your only job isn't going to be just coaching. I would challenge you guys to, as far as administrative duties, accounting, any kind of business and finance, like knowing how to run a program, knowing how to recruit, being more personable with people. Psychology plays a huge role in that. My task at Erskine, Erskine wants me to have a combined roster of men and women of above 100 athletes. That's a gigantic team for cross country and track. And I started with 5. So Erskine doesn't necessarily care if I win or lose. They care that I have a big team, and that's the name of the game. It's not going to be every school you see or every place that you're at. It's not necessarily about how good you are at coaching. You have to be good at the other things as well. And while I'm afforded a really great opportunity with Erskine to grow a large team and to bring in high character kids, that eventually does lead to winning. So this past year, second year with cross country, I went from having 5 women on the team to 11. And so we went from last place in the conference to second place in one season. Didn't have a girl under 22 minutes for a 5K. Last year it was 18:52. And so, it matters the kind of time and energy that you put into your team. And, looking at what it was like to coach this group, it challenges in a number of different ways. When you have a really young team, they're all freshmen, you have no leaders. So you kind of are the leader. I live in the town of Due West where Erskine is. I have a house on Main Street. I'm 100 yards from my office. I can literally walk there. My athletes know exactly where I live, which isn't always a great thing. But that's the kind of availability that I've given my program. And eventually when there's 100 plus kids in the team, it's going to be the same. Because if you really want to grab the attention of the people you're coaching, the people that you're in charge of, that are in your care, you have to be available. I've never really been fond of coaches who live, hour plus from their coaching job. It's kind of like, all right, I want to get as far away from you guys as possible. And, you're, God has given you the ability, if He's given you the ability to coach, if this ends up being the profession that you choose, you're in a position to impact a generation. And, I'm not married, I don't have kids, this is what I feel that God has called me to do. If those things come along later, awesome. But I know that I've been tasked to be a part of the lives of everybody who enters my program. And there are some who really, really like me, and there are some who absolutely hate my guts. And that's something that you guys are gonna have to be okay with. So to do it right, I think you have to be very involved with your team, especially with you guys being younger. Your big advantage going into coaching is that you are close in age with the people, or closer in age with the people you are coaching. So you guys already know, have all of you either college athletes or at least high school athletes? Okay. So you guys already know what it feels like on the other side to be coached by someone else. Think about what was positive about it, what was negative about it, what they did that was good, what they did that was bad. And then when you get into coaching, you have to look at yourself the same way. There are things that you were going to try out in year 1 that are dreadful. And you're like, I can't believe I did that. And there are going to be some things you knock out of the park. And your athletes are going to give you that feedback too. With my team being very young at Erskine, I think what I've appreciated the most is the people that I've placed as captains. And I've placed them in that role because I know they're going to say exactly to my face what's wrong. And I know that there's some older coaches that, don't like that athletes will talk back to them or will give them a piece of their mind. But those are the ones that I want in a leadership role, because when you become a head coach, you start to miss things. Because you have an administrative role, you're recruiting, you're trying to run a bunch of practices. There are human details that you miss. And so it's very important that you have people on your staff, people in your life, people on your team that are willing to speak up and to give you the truth. So it has been a big change going out of college, my expectations coming out, especially going into an internship, was I got the bachelor's degree, there's just gonna be a job there waiting for me. And that's not necessarily the case. You guys have to put yourselves in position to go and get those jobs. At every step of the way, you gotta give yourself a chance. I was very fortunate at Anderson that role turned in, because I very well could have been a volunteer there for 3-4 years and not gotten anywhere. And honestly, at that point, if I had to wait a year, maybe 2, I don't know that I would have stayed in it, because eventually you have bills to pay, you have to take care of yourself. And so you have to put yourself in every position possible to advance your coaching, to advance your knowledge, to add connections. My old boss at Anderson is still one of my closest friends. He lives in New Orleans. Great guy. Anytime I want very black and white advice, I get a call from him. And so you need to surround yourselves with those kind of people that will give you the truth even if you don't like it. I can safely say that, being on this side of things as a head coach, you will get a lot of criticism, and not just from your team. You will get criticism from parents, from the administration, from other coaches. You have to be okay with taking that and knowing when to take it to heart and when to put it to the side. One of the biggest challenges, I think, for me has been that part. When I was an assistant, I was loved by everybody that was my event group. They all loved me. Now as a head coach, there are members of the team that don't like me, and so it changes. It's like, wow, I'm not the most popular guy anymore. My assistant walks in on a practice and everyone's like, hey coach, and those same athletes are like, oh, hi, Coach Anderson. They give you a different attitude, and so and that's part of the price of leadership is you're not going to be popular. You're going to make very uncomfortable decisions. I think Kobe Bryant said it best when that a lot of leaders are afraid to touch that nerve that's required in leadership, to say something to someone that is very uncomfortable. And so take that with a grain of salt. Don't just be an aggressive, hostile person to everyone you see and intentionally step on nerves. But there are going to be moments where you have to make in-the-moment decisions, and you've got to be okay that this might hurt someone's feelings. You've got to be all right with saying it, because it's your job and your responsibility to get the best from everyone in your care. So I want to, kind of turn this guys over to you for questions and everything. What is it that you guys are looking to go into specifically with coaching?
Sport or just?
In general.
Just the same thing as you were saying earlier, just impact kids' lives. Like I had a coach who changed mine, and I kind of want to do the same for other kids like that.
Okay. What specific direction with coaching do you want to go? College, high school?
Probably high school, I think.
High school, okay. Why high school?
Just kind of like now that I've been in college for 4 years and just know how we are, like it's a lot easier, I feel like, to change a kid's mind or to mold their minds differently than now, because we're kind of set in our ways a little bit more. And I just feel like it'll be a little easier and a little more direct, I guess.
Okay. What about you?
Figuring it out as I go.
Figuring it out as you go. That's fair. What are you wanting from the profession, wherever you find it?
I'm not the one sitting up front. I think.
I know. See how I just turned it on you guys.
I mean, selfishly, I want to not hate my job.
That's fair.
But I think selflessly, kind of what I was saying, like, I think the people who have had the most impact in my life and have really directed me toward Christ are my coaches. And so I want to have that, like you were saying, I really want to have that availability to pour out on others.
My coach, very young, but I'm kind of changing my direction of what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
And he just put that high school or college.
Okay. Fair enough. About you?
I think initially coaching is appealing to me because I really like seeing kids get it, Like, so I coach gymnastics through high school, and then even right now, I'm coaching the vaulters here a little bit. And like, to see like them work on something and like work really hard and finally see them like get that cue or like that different thing is like, it makes them feel accomplished, but I also like have a really big sense of like pride and accomplishment. And like, in high school, like Corey said, I had a lot of coaches that made a huge impact on me, and I think like high school kids are really impressionable, and I wish, like, my little brother's in high school, and I wish he had more coaches that could like impress on him like good life skills, because I feel like he's kind of having the opposite, and I think there just needs to be better coaches that are telling kids the right things.
Probably college. I don't know, after my GA, like if I get a GA spot somewhere, that's like the defining moment, because I can always go back to high school. Like I have jobs there, but I don't have any promising jobs in college.
What sport?
Football.
Football, okay. What is your thought process and plan with going for a GA spot?
Go to Coastal. I played for Charleston Southern. Coastal. Football coaches now are at Coastal, so I just want to get my connections over there. Hopefully break it good.
Very good. So,
Probably high school football, that's because I want to impact kids' lives, help them become better people, and get them connected to colleges, and more practice out there.
yeah,
Again, we say to play at this level.
absolutely. How about you?
College football.
College football? Why?
Like he said, I mean, I want to impact on kids' lives and stuff, but, I mean, for me, I mean, like he said, being young, I'm like gonna be able to connect with the kids, so I'm gonna use that to my advantage and try to like work on it.
How about you?
So I have to say high school, the sport is pretty much undeclared because I've been through it and played a lot of sports. But football is my desired location. And like most of them said, my high school coach just kind of set me aside when I was coming up because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had a lot of knowledge of sports and I was very diverse. So he kind of shared his philosophy with me and kind of formulated goals for me that gave me a pretty bright future, gave me a reason to go where I'm going. So I kind of want to return that back to him.
Very good. So you're working for your high school coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really know yet. I've volunteered for a high school the past 2 seasons football. And so my internship in the spring is gonna be with a college, so after that I'll decide which one I like better and which one, it's really just opportunities, wherever I get the first opportunity, is where I'm gonna decide where I'm gonna go, you know.
Yeah, gotta be okay with where the path leads.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
I say I'm still figuring it out. Go to grad school, figure out what I want to do, something within sports. Ideally, all my high school coaches suck, so they made me not want to be a coach. But I mean, it's just the truth. I mean, just kind of ruin my dreams for me, you know. So I don't want to be a coach though. So
Okay,
I
fair
don't
enough.
work in sports though. I don't want to be no coach. I got anger issues. Can't do kids. I end up in jail.
Fair enough.
Hey, Dylan,
Yeah.
did I hear you say that they're gonna measure you at Erskine, not based on wins and losses, but the level, the amount of recruiting of students, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, make sure you express that again, I want them to hear that.
Okay.
It's not about whether you win or not, you need to bring kids in, is that how I understand it, right?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, so what Erskine tasked me with when I started the program is that they want me to have a combined roster over 100 athletes. And, you know, from their perspective, like Erskine is trying to grow as a school, they're looking at enrollment. They could probably care less if I am successful or not. So I'm not like hired as in, I got the job because I have a good reputation and because I am good at my profession, but the most important piece was that I'm good at recruiting. That's gonna be the piece, especially you football guys that are wanting to go into college. You guys have to be able to recruit, you have to be able to convince people why your program is good, why going to the school is good, and know your audience really well. There's some kids I know, I have a snowball's chance of recruiting them. So, and for me to bring in, 100 kids total, like my we use, I cannot think of the software that we use, but, I mean, I have roughly 20,000 athletes in my database, recruiting class of 2021, 22, and 23. It's a gigantic list. You are constantly in that. And, you know, I do more of that than coaching or even my administrative work, because at the end of the day, my salary is dependent on how big my team is.
So Dylan, you need to be good at sales and human relations. You need to be a good communicator to convince the parents and the students.
Yep.
And the X's and O's of coaching is way at the bottom of the list, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. There are a number of coaches that I know are much better at their craft than I am, but I'm able to out-recruit them, get better people in, and have better job security. I mean, from the school's perspective, you know, I'm bringing in several $100,000 every year, and at the end of the day, that pays the bills. And so, you know, while I want to win, I intend to be very competitive in this conference and having kids go to nationals, and that's all well and good, and those are things to put on my resume. But what's not going to go on my resume is my recruiting and how I'm going to keep myself relevant. Especially like if you were looking to go into another smaller Christian school, I can almost guarantee that's what your job is going to be. And so you have to get good at that piece first. And then when you get settled, you get more assistance, you know, then you can kind of say, all right, let's really pour the time and energy into it. So being really knowledgeable about your sport per se is not the end of the road.
How about volunteerism? So you highlighted the volunteerism with Anderson before you got paid.
Yes.
Do you suggest these young coaches go out and get some volunteer experience coaching before they look for that first paid gig?
Time and place is everything. So Anderson, I took as a volunteer role because my parents lived in Anderson. It made sense. It lined up. Moving across the country for a volunteer job, I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense. And again, I was in the right place at the right time. So like being a volunteer there, you know, paid off. I was maybe a volunteer for 6 months, and I was hired that summer. So I knocked it out of the park and got very lucky. But time and place is everything. Like if you have a great connection to be a volunteer somewhere with coaches that you know that are on the move, and you can kind of sense that opportunity, that's where you want to be. Where you know, there's always a ton of turnover in coaching. You know, I can't even hardly reach high school coaches that are cross country and track because the directory updates every month. Oh, that coach isn't here anymore. Great. So the opportunities are out there. You just got to know and have a good sense of what's going to open up.
Anybody else?
Any other questions?
If they want to reach you, how will they get hold of you?
All of my information is on Erskine Athletics website. So if you guys, advice, really anything like that, I mean, my cell, my email's on there. You know, feel free to ask. You know, I'm more than happy to help you guys get into the profession. I can't guarantee that I will have a job, but if you're, you know, roughly speaking, I should have a connection somewhere, or at least a place to point you. So.
Excellent, thank you, Dylan. Have your reports in by Monday. I'll see y'all later.